Hello, my name is Vern, and we will be covering off on some news articles regarding Jehovah's Witnesses, jw.org. First of all, we're going to take a look at the Germany gun uh, mass shooting, and we all know what happened there. It's been in the news for a while. But what I found was interesting with this article is really what the German government is doing and the amount of work they're putting into this investigation. And what I'm wondering is, are they going to investigate the Jehovah's Witnesses for the shunning policy as deep as they're investigating everything else? Probably so. But let's see what's happening so far. Germany, gun officials charged over Hamburg church shooting. And that church is Jehovah's Witness Kingdom Hall. An employee at the Hamburg's Weapons Authority faced charges of negligent homicide tied to the fatal shooting at the Jehovah's Witness Hall. He's accused of failing to pass on details about the shooter's mental state. And this is what I'm wondering, regarding disfellowshipping, if congregations, Jehovah's Witnesses are going to have to pass those details on to the authorities so that the authorities have a good idea if someone's suffering mentally from the violence. They call it psychological violence now, and this is the new term that they're using in Norway in the courts. So all over the world, they're looking at this as psychological abuse, spiritual abuse. So this is really coming out, and it's coming out fast, actually. So it says here the German prosecutor said on Thursday that the employee of the Weapons Authority was charged with negligent homicide in relation to the deadly shooting. Investigators accuse the official of failing to report or suppressing information about the shooter and his mental health. The shooter, identified as Philip F., went on a shooting spree and killed 8 people, including himself, in March. The 35-year-old German citizen was a former member of the congregation. And shows here some police with everything taped off. Hamburg gunman was former Jehovah's Witness. So that's all over the news. There's a video there. We'll post this in the descriptions below. So if you want to look at it yourself, you can. What did the prosecutor say? The gun authority employee is believed to have received information about the shooter through a member of a gun club to which the latter belonged. The employee then allegedly advised the club member of sending an anonymous letter to the firearms authority and failed to report such information to his superiors, according to the prosecutors. 3 members of the gun club are also being investigated, prosecutors said. Investigators accuse them of having blindly accepted the shooter's claim of having passed an April 2022 practical expertise test to secure his license, which he in fact had failed. Interesting. Officials on Thursday searched the gun authority employee's office, the premise of the gun club, and the residences of the 3 members. The shooting sparked debate on gun laws. The perpetrator in the Hamburg shooting was registered as a sports shooter and legally owned a murder weapon, a semi-automatic pistol. The attack triggered a debate among German politicians about the existing gun laws. Interior Ministry Nancy Faeser, who has already presented a draft of new gun control legislation in January, vowed to fill the gaps in the gun legislation. And Faeser called for better coordination between authorities and for psychological checks for all those who apply to get weapons possession cards. And I'll tell you what, Jehovah's Witnesses will be a mark now, and especially, I bet you they'll have questions. If you say, I'm a Jehovah's Witness, they'll say, are you disfellowshipped? I bet you that'll be in there. Be interesting to see what happens, what comes of this. So that's all we have on that, but it really goes to show how the governments are really clamping down and looking into every aspect of this psychological part of it. And it's just a matter of time, and this is all going to come out, the psychological abuse from being disfellowshipped and shunned and what it does to a person. We have a lot of videos on our channel. If you haven't yet subscribed, take a look. We talk a lot about the mental condition as a result of being disfellowshipped. I was disfellowshipped once, and I had many in my family that were, and it's created a lot of psychological problems. So let's move forward. The next article we're going to look at is Japan. And this doesn't name Jehovah's Witnesses in this article, but it shows us what's going on in Japan regarding their laws. So let's just look at this together. Excuse me. Forced participation in religious activities to be classified as child abuse in Japan. Tokyo New Health Ministry guidelines in Japan will classify as abuse any acts by members of religious groups who threaten or force their children to participate in religious activities or that hinder a child's career path based on religious doctrine. So when I read that, that just spelled out Jehovah's Witnesses to me, because Jehovah's Witnesses do not encourage the young people to reach higher education, to see what their mind can do. And I think this is what the governments are looking at with these religions. They could be hampering Einstein's. There could be children within the Jehovah's Witness religion that could be very smart, but they're suppressed. And this is what this government is doing. And of course, Japan is very high up on the list in the world. We see Japan doing this and looking at this within their country. We'll see other countries follow suit, like Canada and others. Now, we carry on here. It says, according to unnamed sources cited by Japanese daily Yomiuri Shimbun, the Health, Labor, and Welfare Ministry is preparing its first draft of guidelines to help local governments deal with issues of child abuse that have emerged in connection with religious groups. And they name such as the Unification Church. And if you're not sure who the Unification Church is, it's officially known as the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification. And I did some research on that, and they call them the Moonies. So the Moonies is another name. So the controversial Unification Church came to attention in 2022 after former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was fatally shot by a man with long-standing grudges against the religious group. Sound familiar? Sounds like Jehovah's Witness shooting in Germany. Grudges against the religious group. Children of religious groups, followers, have criticized the authorities' handling of the issues in the past. They have said that child consultation centers and the police did not respond to their complaints of abuse, telling the children there was nothing they could do because freedom of religion is protected under the Constitution. So all of this freedom of religion that Jehovah's Witnesses fought for, it is going to be refined, is what I see happening here. In October, the ministry told local governments not to make perfunctory responses simply because a problem is religious in nature. It is also working to outline specific points in the guidelines that the authorities should be aware of when dealing with such cases. According to the sources, the envisioned guidelines will be in question and answer format and will specify what faith-based acts against children fall under the categories of abuse as stipulated in the Child Abuse Prevention Law. The law stipulates 4 types of abuse: physical, sexual, neglect, and psychological. Inciting fear by telling children they will go to hell, or that Armageddon's coming, or Jehovah won't like you, or if you want to please Jehovah, you better get baptized, or things like that. But here it uses the word hell. So if you're telling your children they're going to go to hell if they do not participate in religious activities or preventing them from making decisions about their career path, is regarded as psychological abuse and neglect in the guidelines. Interesting. And I can't see Jehovah's Witnesses meeting these guidelines at all. They're gonna score 0 on all of this stuff because they go against all of this stuff. How do I know? I was in it for 30 years, raised my kids in it. I myself was spiritually abusive to my kids because I hindered them from pursuing an education higher than high school. So other acts that will constitute neglect include not having the financial resources to provide adequate food or housing for children as a result of making large donations, or blocking their interactions with friends due to the differences in religious beliefs, and thereby undermining their social skills. So Jehovah's Witnesses, XXX, they actually take people's visas. So they're putting their members in debt, and many of their members are struggling to pay rent, to buy food. So they're using their credit cards, and the organization, the Jehovah's Witness organization, takes the money freely from their credit cards, putting people into debt, and they're paying interest, high interest on that Visa card, just to finance the organization. So this law is going to look at all those things, because now when Jehovah's Witnesses are in trouble financially, they have sent out a private letter to the elder bodies, and they said, send your people to the food banks, send your people to the governments for help. That's what they have done. So that's why we in Canada, as well as all over the world, we want to shut these charities down. They are no longer charities. And if you look in the description below, we'd appreciate your help. We have a petition out in Canada for signatures. So we're going to carry on. This really is a good law, in my opinion. So when taken action, the guidelines will urge child consultation centers and local governments to pay particular attention to the possibility that children may be unable to recognize the damage caused by abuse after being influenced by the doctrine-based thinking and values. Excellent. In addition, there are concerns that giving advice to parents may cause the abuse to escalate and bring increased pressure from religious groups and families. In the light of this, the guidelines will call for making the safety of children the top priority and taking them into temporary protective care without hesitation. For children 18 years of age and older and eligible for protection and not eligible for protection by child consultation centers, local governments should instead refer them to legal support centers, welfare offices, and other consultation facilities. So it looks like even if you're over, no longer a youth, you're 18, they have other centers in Japan that they're going to help people out with to get out of this religious indoctrination. Guidelines already exist for child consultation centers on how to respond to abuse, but this will be the first time that they are devised specifically for children of religious followers. Excellent. The ministry has been developing these guidelines based on interviews conducted with some of the children in question. So that's the end of the article, and we'll be looking for more information on that as it comes out. So here in Japan, we want to give Japan a big hand for having being one of the big countries out there really taking action to protect our children. And this is the problem within the Jehovah's Witness religion. We've reported on Norway. Norway is now no longer recognizing them as a charity because of their discrimination. Well, that's our two articles for today. So we look at what's going on in Germany and the laws that are being established right now in Japan to protect the youth within religious organizations from psychological abuse, from suppressing the youth from higher education, and from discrimination to youth. So we see it happening, folks. We see it starting in Norway. We see it coming in Japan. And we see what's happening in Germany and how the German officials are really delving into this. And they're going deep into finding out why these things are happening within this religion. Well, thanks again, folks. And until next time, keep living your life with love. Bye for now.